a little town somewhere in Kenya, there lived a young lady called Emma who had wonderful plans for herself and was keen on achieving them. Coupled with her high self-value and dignity of human person, her path for perfection seems well defined. Emma had always been the kind of person who followed the rules. Growing up in a devoutly religious household, she was taught that purity was sacred, that her body was a temple, and that her choices reflected not only on her, but on her family and her faith. Her parents, especially her mother, had instilled in her a deep sense of moral responsibility. Your virtue is your greatest treasure, her mother would say, her voice firm but loving. Guard it with your life. At 22, Emma was still holding on to that teaching, even as the world around her seemed to move in a different direction. She was a senior in college, studying to become a teacher. And while her peers talked openly about their relationships and experiences, Emma remained reserved. She had never been in a serious relationship, partly because she was focused on her studies, but also because she was waiting for the right person, someone who shared her values, someone who would respect her faith and her boundaries. That was before she met Daniel. Daniel was everything Emma wasn't. He was confident, charismatic, and unapologetically secular. They met at a campus event, and from the moment he introduced himself, Emma felt drawn to him in a way she couldn't explain. He was charming and attentive, and he seemed genuinely interested in her. For the first time, Emma felt seen, not as the good girl her parents expected her to be, but as a person with her own desires and dreams. Their relationship started innocently enough. They would meet for coffees, study together in the library, and take long walks around campus. Daniel was respectful of Emma's boundaries, at least at first. He never pressured her, and he seemed to understand her hesitation when it came to physical intimacy. But as their connection deepened, Emma began to feel torn. She cared for Daniel, but she couldn't shake the guilt that came with being with someone who didn't share her faith. She knew her parents would disapprove, and the thought of disappointing them weighed heavily on her. One evening, after a particularly stressful day, Emma found herself at Daniel's apartment. They had been arguing about what? She couldn't even remember, and she was feeling vulnerable. Daniel, sensing her distress, pulled her into a hug. "You are so hard on yourself," he whispered. "You don't have to be perfect all the time." His words were like a balm to her frayed nerves. For the first time, Emma allowed herself to let go, to be present in the moment. But as the evening wore on, Daniel's behavior began to shift. He became more insistent. His touches were intimate. Emma felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her chest. She wanted to say no, to stop him, but the words wouldn't come. She felt paralyzed, torn between her desire to please him and the voice in her head screaming that this was wrong. Afterward, Emma felt a deep sense of shame. She lay in Daniel's bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. She thought after her parents, about the lessons they had taught her, and about how far she had strayed from them. She thought about her faith, about the promises she had made to herself and to God. And she thought about Daniel, about how he had made her feel in that moment, like she was nothing more than an object, a means to an end. The days that followed were a blur. Emma tried to convince herself that everything was fine, that she had made the choice willingly. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that Daniel had manipulated her, that he had taken advantage of her vulnerability. She felt a deep sense of betrayal, not just by himself, but by herself. How could she have let this happen? Emma's guilt was compounded by her relationship with her parents. They had always been her moral compass, and the thought of disappointing them was almost too much to bear. When she went home for the weekend, she could barely look them in the eye. Her mother, never perceptive, noticed the change in her demeanor. "Is everything okay, sweetheart?" she asked her, voice filled with concern. Emma wanted to tell her the truth, to confess everything and seek her mother's guidance, but the words stuck in her throat. How could she explain something she didn't fully understand herself? Instead, she forced a smile and nodded. "I'm just tired," she said. "College is stressful." Her mother didn't press further, but Emma could see the worry in her eyes. It only added to her guilt. As the weeks passed, Emma struggled to reconcile her actions with her beliefs. She felt like she had failed, not just her parents, but herself. She began to question everything she had been taught, wondering if her faith was a source of strength or a chain holding her back. She sought solace in prayer, but the answers she sought remained elusive. It wasn't until she confided in her best friend, Sarah, that Emma began to find clarity. Sarah, who had always been more pragmatic than religious, listened without judgment. "You are not defined by one moment," she said. "What matters is how you move forward. You are still the same person, kind, compassionate, and strong. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." Sarah's words were a turning point for Emma. She realized that her worth wasn't tied to her virginity or her ability to live up to an impossible standard of perfection. She was human, and humans make mistakes. What mattered was how she learned from those mistakes and grew stronger because of them. Emma's journey wasn't easy, but it was hers. She learned to forgive herself, to set boundaries, and to recognize her own worth. And as she looked ahead, she knew that she was capable of navigating life's uncertainties, one step at a time.